So today's training will be on CADAC in general, since the majority of you will be new to CADAC, and more specifically on the book publishers and magazines financial form that is new to CADAC. So as Marie-Chantal mentioned, the Q&A function will be available throughout the presentation. Feel free to submit your questions at any point so you don't forget your questions. And Karim and Marie-Chantal will be moderating the Q&A and try to answer throughout the presentation. If there's anything that requires maybe a bit more of a demonstration, we'll go through the questions at the end of the presentation and answer the ones that we were not able to present or answer during the presentation. First of all, I'd just like to do our land acknowledgements. I'd like to acknowledge that the Canada Council for the Arts offices are located in Ottawa and are on unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. And for today's agenda, we'll start by viewing CADAC's mission objectives, a few CADAC fun facts. Then we'll review the publisher financial form structure, then jump into a live demonstration of the system, and finish with unanswered questions. So what is CADAC? It's a joint effort of arts funders across the country. So the original system was developed in 2008, but was since developed, or a new system was developed in 2022 by the Canada Council for the Arts in collaboration with the CADAC members, as its strong commitment to foster sectoral collaboration and sharing of knowledge within the arts sector, and to promote the value of public investment in the arts. So currently there are more than 18 participating members across the nation. So the mission of CADAC is to collect and make available consistent, credible financial and statistical data on publicly funded arts organizations in Canada. CADAC is contributing to an environment in which both funding agencies and arts organizations are better positioned to do their work. So what are the objectives of CADAC? So CADAC creates efficiencies and opportunities for both funding agencies and arts organizations by providing common financial and statistical forms, by improving accountability and transparency for both the funders and applicants by reviewing and validating the financial data, by providing reliable data for assessment processes, for research, for policy and program development, and performance measurement and evaluation. And finally, by providing data that helps demonstrate the value and the reach of public funding of the arts. Now, the value of CADAC for the arts sector. So really, there's three main added values to the arts sector. So number one would be it's a unique national source of reliable financial data. So CADAC right now is the only system in Canada that provides standardized and validated financial information for the arts sector. It ensures consistent and comparable data across thousands of organizations. Number two, it's essential for advocacy and sector support. So CADAC data is used by agencies and governments to demonstrate sector needs, to justify funding requests and support major policy decisions. A great example for that is how CADAC's data was used to justify emergency and reopening funds during and right after the COVID pandemic. And finally, CADAC enables informed data-driven decision-making. So funders rely on CADAC's data and multi-year trends and benchmarks to assess financial health, guide program design, and strengthen transparency and accountability in public funding. So really, organizations will often wonder, like, why am I doing this? Why do I have to enter all this data in CADAC? So really, these examples just really show why CADAC matters. So it's not just a requirement, but it's actually a tool that will support and benefit organizations directly. Now, before we go into the weeds of the training, let's just clarify who does what. What's CADAC's role in terms of training and information versus your funders? So CADAC will provide information about the CADAC system and its functionalities, including how to access the new publisher form. CADAC will present the structure and components of the new publisher financial form. We'll also explain the reconciliation process and how financial data is reviewed. And we'll highlight the reference documents, training, what's available to you in terms of help and support. For your funder, they manage their own publisher funding process. So each funder will have their own program, their own application process. They will provide any funding-related information. So if you have any questions about the actual program or the funding, that should be directed to your funders. And finally, funders will respond to questions, again, about the funding and anything about the deadline or what's to be included in your application, how many years to complete in CADAC. That's all your funder's responsibility. A few fun facts about CADAC. So it's been just over 17 years since the inception of the original CADAC system in 2008. We have more than 2,350 active arts organizations in the system right now, with over 4,400 active CADAC users. We have over 60 programs administered through CADAC, with over 17,000 financial forms that have been locked. Over 43,000 financial and statistical forms have been used for research purposes. And we currently have two types of forms in CADAC. So we have the standard form, and now we have the new book publisher and magazine form. Just a little bit of background and information about the publisher form. So CADAC was mandated to develop more tailored forms that better reflect the needs of different groups of organizations. The publisher form itself was developed after extensive consultations with a dedicated committee and sector experts. And publishers currently had to submit their separate budgets and annexes with their applications, depending on the funder. But now with the new form in CADAC, everything will be integrated, or this whole reporting of financial and statistical data will be integrated into CADAC. So this was created in response to a long-standing publisher needs. The standard CADAC form was not very well suited for publishers, since most operate as for-profit businesses and deal with inventory, book sales, etc. The new form is designed to reduce ambiguity and to streamline reporting. And it also improves sector-specific relevance and alignment with how publishers and magazines manage their finances. Now, before jumping into the live demonstration, we'll just take a quick look at the structure of the financial form. So the financial form has four main sections. So we have the revenues. In the revenues, we'll have your earned revenues, net investment income, private sector revenues, public sector revenues and grants, and any other revenues like amortization, parent organization contributions. In the expenses, we have editorial, production, distribution, and circulation costs, facility operating expenses, marketing and communication, fundraising, and admin expenses. In your profit and loss, or annual and accumulated surplus, we'll also have lines for other adjustments, owners' withdrawals, interfund transfers. And finally, we have your balance sheet, which has your assets, liabilities, and net assets or equity. And the form can have one of many statuses. So once you jump in, sign in, and go to your financial forms, you're going to see that they all have a new status. So new basically means that there's no records created, nothing. It's a brand new, fresh form. Then we have a draft and plus draft. So the draft will be, if you take a new form and you create the form, the system will automatically create a draft for that form. A plus draft means that within any other statuses, if you make any changes and click on save and you don't submit them yet, this is going to save your changes as a little plus draft. So plus draft means that these new changes are only visible to you, and they're not yet visible for your funders or for CADAC staff. So if you have a program deadline coming and you have to submit everything, it needs to be submitted without that little plus draft to make sure that your funders and CADAC sees your most up-to-date changes. Submitted is basically when you've submitted your data and it is now visible to funders and CADAC staff. Under review, that's when CADAC will start the reconciliation process. So we'll set the form to under review, which means you can no longer make edits to the form while we do the review. A revised status will mean that during a review, we've identified a few corrections or anything that needs to be clarified. If an amount needs to be moved or corrected, we'll add some correction request and we'll send the form back for revision. So we'll put the status to revise. Once you go into a form that is in revised, you make the corrections and you click on submit. Then the form status will change to resubmitted, meaning that you had submitted it, we sent it back for revision, you've made corrections, it is now resubmitted. And finally, once everything's good and entered correctly, we'll lock the form, and the status will now show as locked, and you can no longer make any edits or do anything in the form other than reference it or view it. So we'll jump into a live demonstration. And essentially, once you're invited to join CADAC, you're going to be receiving an email with an invitation link. So once you click on that link, it will give you this page here. So you're going to have your own unique invitation code. So this will allow you or invite you to create your own user profile. Once you create your user profile, you will then be able to go and complete your organization's profile and start entering financial data in CADAC. So the process is quite simple and quite straightforward. So you just follow the prompts as you go in. Just enter your information here. And click on register. And that's it. Your user profile is created from there. These are the terms and conditions. You're welcome to grab a coffee, sit down, and go through all of this. And you accept the agreement and continue, and then you are in CADAC. So this is your user profile. So you can access this page at all times by clicking on your name here in the top menu and clicking on profile. And from here, you can change your password if needed. You can change your email address, your name, any information. You could also change your language preference and click on update. And during the session, at any point, you can toggle back between English and French if ever needed. And also, if ever there's a change of staff, but let's say you use a generic email like director@organization.ca, and you just want to keep the same email, the same access to CADAC without having to create a whole new account, you can simply come to this profile, keep the same email address, or even change the email address if you want to use a different one. Just change your password, and there you go. You don't need to invite a new user or create a new account for yourself. From here, the next step will be to create your organization's profile. So for this, we'll click on Organizations in the top menu. And we'll see that there's an organization assigned to me, but it currently has just a generic number as the legal name. So that's a system-generated number just to, I guess, identify your organization as in the system until you create your profile. So to create the profile, we'll go into the Actions column, click on the little drop-down menu, and click on Edit Organization. So from here, we'll basically go down the form and just enter all the information. Mandatory information will have a little red asterisk. So what you can do is erase the legal or the generic number and enter your legal name. So for this, I'll call it David's Books. And you can enter your website if you want to. The address, it works with Google addresses or Google Maps. So as you start entering, you might have some saved information here. So you can close this, and as you start entering information, Google will start showing recommendations. So you can click on your address as it shows up, and all the other information should populate. So your city, province, postal code should all automatically populate. Once that's done, we enter our fiscal year end. So it's automatically going to populate the last day of the month as you select your month. Here you can select if you're incorporated or not. And then you can enter your incorporation number and whether it's provincial or federal, as well as your business number. Type of organization. So this is where you specify if you're for-profit or non-profit, and whether you're a charitable organization. So there's two lines in the financial form that we'll see later that are specific for charitable organizations. So they're for donations for which charitable receipts were given. So these two lines, if you don't enter a charitable number here in your profile, these two lines will be grayed out and you won't be able to use them. And you can enter your organization discipline. Most of you will be literary arts as a publishing company, and you can add your specialization. If none of the specializations are applicable, you can also select not applicable. And you could also add multiple specializations and multiple practices as needed. And finally, we consent or not to the data sharing. So essentially, opting into the data sharing basically means that other researchers from other funders, so let's say your organization is currently funded by the Canada Council for the Arts, if you opt in to the data sharing, it will basically mean that other researchers from other funders that are members of CADAC could have access to your data for research purposes. So not all the program officers or staff of those funders, but only the researchers from those funders would be given access to your data for research purposes. And once we're done, we click on Save. And the system should generate a new CADAC ID for your organization. So if we go back to organizations, we now see that there's a CADAC ID that has been generated automatically by the system. What it does is it takes the 3 first letters of your legal name and adds a few numbers at the end. So this is your key. So once you have your CADAC ID, let's say you start getting funded by another municipal or provincial funder that is part of CADAC and they want to have access to your CADAC information, they will come to you and request your CADAC ID so that they can enter it in their system and gain access to your information. This is the code or the ID that you will be providing to them. So from here, we have our user profile created. We have our organization profile created. Now the world is our oyster. We can navigate through CADAC. We can invite new users. So let's say we have another staff or treasurer that we want to bring on board that will be doing most of the data entry in CADAC. Again, we navigate to the actions column. This is where you can access everything related to your organization. And we can, from here, we can view the profile we just created. We can view users. We can edit the profile, so edit the organization if we need to change the address, change any information. And we can invite users. So to invite a new user, it's quite straightforward. We basically input the here .ca. So we basically type in their email address, select the role. So supervisor access will basically have all accesses throughout the system with the organization. So they'll be able to update the organization profile. They'll be able to remove accesses to users, invite new users. An organization user will basically be able to manage the organization profile, enter information, but they will not be able to manage users. And the organization contractor is a third-party person that you hire to enter the data. So they're able to go in and only access the financial form, make changes, submit them, and that's it. So for this, for our treasurer, I'll put organization user, and we click on verify email address. So what the system will do at this point is verify if that email address is already used in the system with another organization, or if there's already a user created for that person. If everything's good, we'll be able to send the invitation. If not, we'll get a little pop-up message that says the organization already exists in the system. And we click on send invitation. And that's it. The invitation was sent, and they're going to get an invitation link just like we had earlier, where they're going to be able to click on it and go and create their user profile. Once they create their profile, the difference is the organization's profile is already going to be created. So once they navigate to organizations, they're going to see this page with all the information already populated. Something else I did want to mention before we go to the financial form is in your organization profile, if ever you need to change your legal name or operating name or your fiscal year end, these fields are locked. So you will need to contact CADAC. For your legal name, we'll usually ask for a proof of change of legal name. So an official document showing that the legal name has been changed, and then we'll make the change for you. Operating name, you simply send us an email. We'll change that that name for you. And again, for your fiscal year end, we'll also ask for an official document just with CRA showing that your fiscal year end has been changed. And we'll make the change for you, and we'll create that little partial year as well for you. Now let's move on to the financial form. So from the actions dropdown, we'll go to financial and statistical forms. For the publisher form at the moment, there's no statistical form for now. So there is a statistical form that was developed by that subcommittee. It will be developed and published later in 2026. When that comes out, you will be able to access you'll see the same thing, but for the statistical form on the right side, and you will be able to access statistical forms from there. But for now, you can only enter your financial data in CADAC. And we can see right now all of our fiscal years. So we can see that it starts from 2019, 2020, and goes all the way to 2031, 32. And we see right now that all the forms have a new status, meaning that there's nothing entered right now. So there's two ways of completing a financial form in the system. You can do it manually online, or you can do it using the export-import function with an Excel document. So I'm going to show you right now how to manually enter data in the form. We'll go through the form, and then I'll demo how to do an export-import. So let's say we want to complete our current year, which would be April 2025, 2026. We would click on New for that year. Or actually, let's do 24-25, since that would be our most recently completed financial year. And this is the form. So we can see, as I said earlier, the different sections. We have earned revenues. And within earned revenues, we have a section on book sales with net of returns. We have a section on magazine subscriptions. We have royalties, other earned revenues. We'll be sending you, after the training as well, a document with the whole publisher form and instructions for every single line so that you can review the form and familiarize yourself with it. Then we have the net investment income section, private sector, which includes the donation lines that I mentioned earlier. So because we did not enter a charitable status in the profile, these lines are grayed out. We have sponsorships, foundation grants, fundraising events. We also have a line for in-kind contribution. So in-kind contribution would need to be, let's say we enter 50,000 here. We would need to also include the equivalent 50,000 in the expenses. So let's say it was 50,000, let's say in-kind in collaborators, arts, and photo fees. Then we would want to record the equivalent in-kind expense in the expenses section. And there's also another line that's like this for advertising exchanges as well. So the whatever amount is entered here must also match, let's say 20,000 should also match the equivalent expense line on lines 5315 for advertising exchanges here. So if we move on in the revenues, sorry, I don't want to make you dizzy right now going up and down, but we were at the private sector revenues. If we go down, we start going into the public sector revenues. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts grants. We have Canadian Heritage grants. Now, specific to the publisher form, we have specific lines for the Canada Book Fund, Canada Periodical Fund, Livre Canada Books, Canadian Federation or ASPP. We also have Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council and other federal, which would include any other federal bodies that gave a grant. For the provincial, we have a section for your Provincial Arts Council. So only use these lines if you receive the grants from an official Provincial Arts Council. Any other provincial grants should be recorded below on the appropriate line, whether it's your Ministry of Culture, if it's a provincial gaming lottery corporation like Ontario Trillium Foundation. We have provincial territorial employment programs, translation programs, support grants from post-secondary institutions, and other provincial and territorial grants. And finally, we have the municipal section. So we have two lines for official municipal or regional arts council, like the Toronto Arts Council, and then two lines for any other municipal or regional grants like City of Toronto, City of Vancouver, any other municipal or regional bodies. And here we have a few other lines for other public sector. We have a line for public in-kind revenue, contributions from parent organizations like a university, and then contributions from stabilization organization, and non-operating revenues like amortization of deferred contributions for capital assets, and finally, other revenues like gain on disposal of assets, gain on, yeah, any other revenues that doesn't fit in any other categories throughout the form. In the expense section, we have a section for the editorial costs, production costs, distribution and circulation. You have your facility operating expenses, marketing expenses, fundraising, and administrative expenses. And we also have non-operating like amortization and other expenses. And finally, in the profit and loss section, we'll see here the total operating revenues and expenses, which will show your total operating revenues and expenses, excluding that little non-operating section. Then we have your total revenues and expenses, including everything. And there's a few entry lines as well here for transfers after profit to and from parent or affiliated corporation. You have a line here for income tax. So if you, let's say, had to pay as a sole proprietor, if there's income tax you have to pay, you can enter it here as a negative amount. Any extraordinary items can go here. Anything that's not, let's say, revenue or an expense, but affects your surplus at the end of the year. And we also have a line here for interfund transfers. And to clarify, interfund transfer, it's an internal movement of money between your organization's own funds, like your operating fund, capital fund, or any restricted funds that would adjust how your surplus and deficit is allocated. So, but it doesn't represent a revenue or an expense. For example, many organizations will use the interfund transfer to move the value of capital assets out of the operating fund so that these capital assets don't inflate the accumulated surplus. So this would keep the operating surplus and deficit focused more on your day-to-day activities, just providing a clearer picture of the organization's actual financial position, and also avoiding the impression of having more available operating funds than you truly do. For example, if you have an annual surplus, operating surplus of like 10,000, but you're carrying this $1 million capital asset in your accumulated surplus, then it would look like you're carrying a surplus of 1,010,000 when actually your day-to-day operation or operational status or surplus is 10,000. So this is what this line is for. Again, we can answer any questions. Feel free to reach out to us if anything's unclear. And finally, we have the net profit and loss for the year. So we'll have our opening balance right here. If this is your first year that you're completing, and let's say the opening balance, if the line is grayed out, you can use the prior year adjustment here to adjust the opening balance and to record that opening balance. And then year after year, the opening balance will be automatically calculated as well as your closing balance. And then we also have a line right here for owners' withdrawals or dividends paid out to shareholders. And finally, we have our balance sheet. So statement of financial position. We have your assets, liabilities, and net assets. We have a line for your current assets. So current assets would be anything pertaining to the next 12 months. Anything that's longer than that would be a other asset. We also have a line specific in the publisher form for inventory at the end of the year. And a line for your capital assets. You have current and other liabilities, and finally your net assets or shareholders' equity, which includes your retained earnings or unrestricted net assets, your capital assets, share capital, internally designated or restricted funds. For Alberta organizations, there's a line specific for cash reserves, externally designated fund, and other net assets. And finally, we have two ratios at the bottom here. So we have your working capital and your working capital ratio to give you a quick snapshot of that year's financial health or what your working capital looks like for that 1 year. So as we submit the form or put data in the form, I'm not going to go through it again, but at the end, we can click on save. And if we click on save, this will save our changes as a draft. So if we refresh the page here, we have a draft status for our 24-25 year, meaning that whatever I put in the form right now CADAC cannot see it, and my funders can't see that information yet as well. Once I'm ready to submit, I can click, let's say I'm going to make more information. Oh, actually, before I submit, something to clarify about the balance sheet, it works as a mathematical equation. So let's say I have $10,000 in assets, and I say I have $5,000 in net assets, and I try to submit. I'm going to get an error message that says, here, I say, okay. I get this error message saying that lines 6275 and 6345 must contain the same amounts. Please review. What this means is that the equation is off. So the equation means it's your total assets minus your total liabilities equals your net assets. This equation needs to be exact to the dollar. So if I have 10,000 assets and I have 5,000 net assets, there's a difference of 5,000 here that's not accounted for. So I need to make sure that in my liabilities, I account for that difference. So if we take the 10,000, deduct 5,000, I'm left with net assets of $5,000. And if I try to submit at this point, the system will allow me to submit. So if ever you click on submit and you get that error message, that's what it means. It means that within your balance sheet, take a look at your total assets, take a look at your total liabilities and net assets, and see where it's off. Even if it's off by $1, the system will not allow you to submit. So it's important to check that. And now that we've submitted, we can see that the status is now marked as submitted. And if we go to the bottom of the form, now that we've submitted, we have a new button called revision. Essentially, this is to see the history of submissions. So as we submit the form multiple times, we're going to be able to see each submission with a timestamp and who made the submission and what the data look like for that submission. So let's say I go back and I make another change here. I add 10,000 in book sales, and let's say I add $300 in investment revenue, and I go down and click on submit. Well, now if we go back to the revisions, I will see a new submission entry with the new timestamp, and all of the lines that went up in value will show up in green. All the lines that went down in value are going to show up in red. So this is just a good tool to see the history of your submissions and to see, let's say you go in and you're like, this doesn't look like what I did or what I submitted. And you can go and take a look at the history or your revisions, and you can see, oh, George went in and did some submissions and he changed the data. We also take a look at the revision history when we, let's say we ask for corrections. If we ask for many corrections and we go in and we see a resubmission, we're going to take a look at the revisions and we can easily see which lines have been modified or not. And finally, once we're done submitting the form and updating the form, we can attach financial statements. So to attach financial statements, we click on add and we can name it. So we can say 2024-25 signed audit. We select what type of financial statements it is. So let's say it's an audit. If I want, I can add any information in description. So I could say signatures are on the balance sheet page or signatures are on the last page, just to give a bit of information, because we'll want to take a look. So the financial statements will need to be signed by your accountant or auditor, and they're also going to have to be signed by your board. And finally, we go and find our financial statements. And we click on submit. And that's it. So the file here, the link might take about a minute or two. It basically sends the file to our SharePoint. The system takes a look, make sure there's no virus in the file. And within a minute or two, if you refresh, the file name with the link to the document will appear right here. And once you submit your form and you attach your financial statements, this is when we at CADAC get a trigger letting us know that this file is ready to be reviewed and reconciled. That's when we're going to go in, we're going to look at your reviews and reconcile it against your financial statements and make sure that everything is entered correctly. If not, we're going to start entering correction requests, which I will show you in another account that I have here that has a bit more data in. So we could take a look at David's magazines for this one. So one thing to note as well is your notifications. So I'll open it in a new tab here. So this is where you can also, you're going to get email address or email notifications, but also if you go in your system, you can access all your notifications directly from here. So for here, I can see that I had a form that was approved, which means that one of the forms that I submitted has been reconciled and locked. And if I click on it, it's going to let me know which form was locked. So right here, I can see that, okay, my 2023 financial form was approved. If I go back to notifications, I can see that, oh, my 2024 financial form that I had submitted was returned for revision. I can also click on the actual status here. And this one will let me know which lines have corrections needed or clarifications needed. So I can see that line 4430, it says, please move the $10,000 Canada Books grant to line. And then this one asks for a clarification. So if I go to my financial form, I can see that 2023 is showing up as locked. My other years are still submitted in draft, but I have 1 year here in revise, which is the year that I saw in my notification. If I click on edit, also you don't have to memorize the lines or the corrections per line. Don't worry, they're going to be directly in the financial form. So as I navigate down, I can go through, and the line that has a correction request is going to have a little red exclamation mark. If I click on it, I'm going to see what the note says. So I can see, okay, please move the $10,000 Canada Books grant to line 4433. So I can see that I had entered a big amount here for Canadian Heritage. So it says to move 10,000. So what I would do is deduct 10,000 from here and move my $10,000 grant to the proper line. And that's done. That's the correction. And I go down here and there's another one. And I can see, could you please clarify where this grant was received from? So I guess this wasn't clear in my financial statements and they want to know if the amount is correctly entered on this line. So I can use the little envelope here to add more details about my entry. And I can do this as I enter data throughout the financial form. I could enter notes as I go. So for this, I would say this is a grant from TAC, so Toronto Arts Council, save. And once I'm done, I can go down. I can also see all of the reconciliation notes in one spot here. So I can see if I missed any reconciliation notes. And I can click on submit. And once it's submitted, we can see that the status is now showing as resubmitted, which means that the form was previously in revise. I made the corrections and clicked on resubmitted, which will notify CADAC. CADAC will go in and verify that the corrections are made. They're going to click on this, and then on our end, we have a button that says resolve. So it's going to move to a green exclamation mark, meaning that it's been resolved. And from there, the status will be moved or switched to locked. And that's it for 2024. So that's it with the financial form and the reconciliation process. Just to end the presentation, we're just going to move on to the reports. So just in your top menu, you have access to reports. So there's three different kinds of reports. We have administrative reports. For this, there's only one, which is your reconciliation notes list report. So basically, this one would generate a history of all the reconciliation notes requested by CADAC for a certain amount of years. So you can select the years. This is good to see a trend of what corrections is needed year after year. Let's say you're training a new staff or you want to know, okay, what do we get wrong every year? And you can just reference those notes and see, oh yeah, we always enter this on this line. It should be moved to that line, or etc. Then we have our financial statistical reports. Again, since there's no statistical form yet for the publishers, it's only going to show financial information. But these are the reports to benchmark yourself against the industry. So in the reports for publishers, you will only be able to compare yourself against other book publishers and magazines in CADAC. So right now, since publishers and magazines are all pretty much all new in CADAC, if you try to look at the reports right now, there might not be a lot of data in comparison. As we go over the next few months and more publishers and magazines are onboarded into CADAC, these data will be, where the reports will be populated with all the data. But there's 4 reports. So you have your organization comparison of form details. This allows you to compare 2 specific years. So if you want to take a look at 2020 and your 2025 numbers, compare them side by side and look at the variances between, let's say, your earned revenues, your assets, anything. This will be the perfect report to compare 2 separate years side by side. Multiple organization comparison of form details will basically allow you to compare. So if I click on it, so sorry, it's a little slow because I'm sharing my screen, which always slows down the system a little bit. But right now, yeah, we can see, so this is in our testing environment, UAT, so it's all fake information. But we can see that there's currently, if I select the year 25-26, we have, we're seeing data or financial data from 8 different organizations. So what I see here is I can see my data per line right here, and I can see the total of the 8 organizations. So this allows me to, and then we can have the means, different means, averages, and different ratios. So this can allow me to benchmark my own data against the industry's data, just to see how I'm doing. And in the filters panel, I could always click on more filters and narrow it down, let's say by discipline or province or even revenue range, to really compare myself with other more comparable organizations. Since it's aggregated data, if you narrow it down too much, and there's less than 5 organizations in the pool, it's not going to show you any data. That's just for confidentiality purposes. We can only show aggregated data for more than 5 organizations. And once you're in here, you can always navigate between the other reports directly from the available reports panel. But if I go back to the reports list, financial detailed trend, this is when you can see the evolution of your finances throughout multiple years. So you can select, let's say, 7 or 8 years. There's also a table or a tab with a chart view. So you can see, let's say, your earned revenues or book sales throughout different years on a linear graph, and see the evolution of your book sales throughout multiple years. And a ratio report to show your debt to asset ratio, your working capital. We have, I think, about 10 or 12 different ratios available there. And you could also compare your ratio with the industry as well. And finally, we have aggregated data reports. So it's the same 4 reports, but it's strictly aggregated data between all of the publishers and magazines available in CADAC. And then you can narrow it down as well by all types of filters. And if ever you want to take a look at aggregated data from all other organizations in CADAC, you can click here at the bottom on this link. And this will give you the aggregated reports for more than 2,000 arts organizations that are using the standard form in CADAC. So this form is going to look a little bit different from you, mainly in the earned revenues. If we look at the financial form lines, there's not going to be anything about book sales or anything. It's going to be a lot more specific to performing arts and other arts organizations. But if ever you want to reference and play around with that data, it's available to you. And again, you have access to those 4 same reports right here. And that's it for the live demo. As we end the presentation, we're just going to go to next steps. So as we move forward, here's what organizations and agencies can expect in terms of upcoming changes and available support. So as I mentioned, for the statistical forms, it was developed alongside the financial form by that same subcommittee and is projected to be introduced in late 2026. The rollout, so book publishers will be invited to register in CADAC. So your agency users or program officers will be sending out the invitations just in the days following this training. Once you get access to CADAC, like as I showed you, you will need to be completing your financial form for your current year, 2 previous years, and 1 to 4 years of projections, depending on your funder's requirements. Earlier fiscal years, like all the way up to 2020, don't need to be completed. So they're not part of the requirements. And in terms of support, a full suite of guides, documents, and training resources and videos will be made available. Again, our direct customer support's available at cadacinfo@cadac.ca. And we're collaborating with agencies and your funders as well to just ensure smooth onboarding. And also note that our offices will be closed between December 24th and January 5th for the holidays. The system will still be available. There's just not going to be any customer support during those dates. And this will be the training page. So I'm going to show you how to access this quickly, but this is where you're going to access all documents. So this will be published in a day or two, where you have specific documents for the publisher. So you're going to have your line instructions for the financial form, an accounting mapping template to help you map your financial statements into the financial form, how to use that template, and an FAQ directly for book publishers. And in the general user guides, we have general modules, different roles for organizations, just quick steps for first-time login instructions, and general FAQs. And to access that page, we navigate to just the CADAC website. We go to training in the top menu, training for organizations, and it's right here. The documents are here. Again, the publisher specific documents will be published within a day or two, but we also have training videos. We'll be sending you a few links as well. So how to redeem your CADAC invitation. So exactly the demo I just provided. How to register your organization in CADAC. So just an overview again of how to complete your organization profile. Navigating in CADAC. Just, how to navigate. Just what we did in the live demo, but they're all pre-recorded videos. How to update your profile and manage users. And then we also have 2 videos on the reports. So core features shows you a quick overview of what each report can do, and more in-depth video on reports that shows you a deep dive into each report and how to navigate between the filters and how to work every single report. And we have as well here how to complete the financial form. I forgot to demo how to complete the financial form with the Excel document, but essentially you click, oh, there it is. Super quick. We click on export. This will just download an Excel document with 7 different years. There it is. Click on enable editing. Again, there's 2 previous years, your current year, and 4 projected years. So we can modify or enter data for any years right here. So we can do 7 years at once. We click on save. Come back and import the file. And this will import all 7 years. Regardless if you put data in years or not, once it's saved, if you click on refresh, and all of the years that were included in that document will now have a draft status because it created a record for it. It did not import any data if you didn't input any data. And then you simply need to click on edit for the years that you've inputted data for, because it saves that as draft. And we can see here for this one, it was submitted and then it's saved our changes as a little plus draft. All we need to do is go and submit each year chronologically. Just a quick note as well, when you submit a year and it affects the closing balance, right here. So when your closing balance is affected, it will automatically change the opening balance for the new year, and it will save that change as a plus draft for the next year. So that's why it's important to submit your years in chronological order to make sure that the closing and opening balance carry forward to the next year correctly. And that's it for the live demo.